You're a visitor here. You are a guest of their kingdom.
I'd love to hear, because she is very much the heart and soul of this film, as we see in flashbacks, as we see in the modern day. What was it like casting not just her for this role, but also finding the younger versions of her for this character?
That for me was, again, like one of these things I tried to kind of deviate from. Like we tried to bring some real, true, like emotional and almost like a dreamy quality to what this movie is. Again, I was trying to do something different for the genre, good, bad, or ugly, right? So it was like one of these things. I'm like, I really tried to dive into Scout's trauma, the past, her dealing with the fact that her dad died, this, that, and the other. And so we wanted to see her at different stages, but also really a lot of that was how do we weave in Dreyfuss in a way that seems as organic as we can possibly have it. It's like Dreyfuss isn't, a young man anymore, but the chance to work with such a legend again in a genre that he's never returned to was, something that we weren't going to pass up. Or we're like, okay, well, he could be this mentor grandfather figure that takes over. And so having Scouts different ages was really fun because the the actress that we shot in Thailand, which is like the little 5-year-old version, and then this kind of preteen version that's kind of grown up. So it was just a cool way to kind of give Scout more and make sure we were constantly seeing this movie through her perspective. This is her journey 100%.
So you talk about bringing Dreyfuss back into this genre, by the way, and I am curious. I mean, did he require a lot of sort of convincing to come back?
Yes, 100% for sure. It wasn't an easy sell. It wasn't an easy sell the first time, and it wasn't. This isn't the case of. This was really just a moral case of how he wanted to enter it or not, because they really have him and the original writer of Jaws had a really strong opinion on how that movie affected the actual ecosystem. And so they didn't want to do that. So we wanted to make sure his idea of how his character was going to come on this fit into the narrative, right? So I was like, look, this isn't the pitch from the beginning, even in the original script, the sharks were never really the true villain in this movie. They really weren't. They're dangerous and you're going to get mauled by a shark if you're messing with sharks. But they weren't, it wasn't the creature feature villain of the movie. Right. So I think that attracted him to, I'm like, okay, well, if we can do it this way, and also kind of fit into the narrative, how I did the ending with Cassidy's kind of cathartic moment of like harmony with nature. And they're not the villains. They're not the bad guys. We're just out of sync in nature here, And so that attracted him to this as well. So he was like, okay, so that plus kind of just, he really wanted to have an eco message in the end. He was like, okay, I can get behind something like this. So.
Well, and I love that the two of you were able to come to that sort of agreement and then bring him back into the fold. I'd love to hear what sort of research you might have done in addition to the script to not only capture the look of the sharks, but also little things like, I think back to Scout yelling at her friend to stop splashing and how that is sort of a trigger for sharks. I'd love to hear sort of what research you did coming into this film.
Man, my Instagram reels and algorithms and TikTok algorithms were like sharks, great white shark week. It was crazy for like months and months. It was a ton of that, right? So it wasn't just like when Dreyfuss had these conversations, he knows a ton about the ecosystem and about shark conservation, but it was really about how are we going to make this stand out where it's like we still have to service the genre, right? Like we understand it's dangerous, we're building suspense, this, that, and the other. But I think the most part for me was how do I make that, I always say this all the time, for me, like I wanted to have this use the force moment Luke thing at the end with Cassidy and the shark. It was like, it's like if Dreyfuss is Obi-Wan and Cassidy's Luke, and then the whole time he's trying to teach her something, at the end you have that cathartic moment. How is that going to pay off, but in a way that is realistic on some level? And some people see it and they go, "What?" I'm like, "You guys," I'm like, the only way you can if you're ever coming across a tiger shark or a great white or something of that nature, you cannot run away. You cannot splash away. You literally have to turn. Like, you go watch Shark Week. They all have to turn and face the shark, take off the mask. They can't have, the eyes have to match. So you have to like see them, and you have to touch the nose and like redirect, right? You can't freak out. And so I felt like all Dreyfuss's teachings along the way was teaching her to conquer her fear enough to have that moment where she is face to face with her greatest fear, and she doesn't give in to her fear. She's able to kind of have this emotional moment where she's kind of just meets her fear head on and is able just to kind of deflect it, and it just kind of goes off, and that's it. That's the end of the shark. And I understand for the genre, it's a little bit anticlimactic in a violent way, but I felt like it was climactic in an emotional way. And that's something that I felt I wanted to stand out, at least as an artist, and do something different than you would see in this kind of genre. And that's what I did.
Well, and I'm glad you did it, because it really does stand out. It's a nice, like you say, cathartic. It's a nice full circle closure to her arc, and I love that for her. I know I've talked a lot about casting, but I would love to ask about John Cena as well, because when I was talking with him the other day, I noted too, it's been quite a while since we've seen him in any kind of villainous role, let alone one like this. He's so good, and so good. I'd love to hear what it was about him that spoke to you to put him in this role.
Well, it's interesting enough. I've been talking. So John and myself, I mean, we have the same management team, and we were talking about kind of packaging this together, and we were looking at different actors, and lists were starting to come together. And I was like, I've liked John's work forever, since The Pacific, and obviously, I mean, look, I'm Latino, so Selena is like one of our classics, right? But I've loved his work on his episodic work too. And so we talked about him. I said, well, let's have a conversation. I said, look, there's this villain here. I said, but he's like the likable villain, man. This is like the Training Day Denzel villain, man. Like, I go, this is that kind of guy that you're liking him, but you don't like him, And I felt like he really understood what that character was, and brought something totally different to that character than was, I wouldn't say on the script, but he understood kind of a little bit of the nuances and made it his own. It was just, we had a lot of fun with it, and I think you could see him having fun with it, but at the same time, like, he's almost doing the mustache twirl, but not really. It's like he's almost there, but he's making it his own. And I thought he did great. I think him and Cassidy really are just kind of ping-ponging the whole time.
That kingdom is your kingdom too.